We've been doing this thing, we've been making this show for about a year now, Avery.
52 episodes already.
And we watched a lot of movies. We've talked about a lot of movies in our year, you know, some good, some bad.
Yeah.
But we watch a lot more movies than we do episodes about because
There be lots.
There's a lot of them. We can't do everything on a deep dive or a green take. Which,
some of them aren't worth talking about for 30 minutes to an hour and a half.
That's true. So we have a lot of these kind of movies building up that we've watched that we still want to talk about. So that's what we're going to do today. It's our 2024, what are we calling it? Mid-year movie roundup?
Green roundup movie.
You choose. You choose.
Let us know.
We're doing a roundup of all the movies we want to chat about. Now, just to be clear, these won't necessarily all be movies released in 2024. They're just movies we've watched in the last year. But most of them have been released in the last year to 3. So it'll be predominantly new releases.
I think mostly non-spoiler. There might be some exceptions if it's something that we don't think
we'll tell you if there's spoilers. We'll tell you if there's spoilers to be had, just to be safe. But yeah, you can assume no spoilers for now.
Most of this, only one of us have seen, I think. But
most of it. I might have some surprises about that for you.
Okay.
But without further ado, let's get into the old mid-year roundup.
Let's do her. I'm going to start with a movie that we talked about deep diving a couple times that I wanted to talk about, but didn't quite make it. And that is Saw X.
How much time do I have?
Months, at best.
I still have a lot of work that needs to be done.
If you've ever enjoyed a Saw, you're going to like this one. It is really solid. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I
will say, I have seen this.
You saw this?
I watched it last night.
Okay, cool.
Because I knew you were going to talk about it, and I thought, hey, why not? I'll throw it on.
Good start. So, I don't know about you. I would call myself a pretty good fan of the Saw franchise. It's a guilty pleasure.
I'll say this. I've liked the Saw movies that I've seen, I think, but I only remember the first one. And then I watched some number of other ones at sleepovers from grades 6 through 8, and I don't remember what they were or how many I saw. All I remember is a guy falling in a pit full of needles.
Sure.
That's the only, it's probably like 4 or 5 or something.
Yep, that was 2.
Okay, that was 2, never mind. But I've seen the first one, and then I pretty much don't remember anything, and then I watched this. So I'm certainly not an expert, but I quite like the first movie. So.
Sure. So a brief recap on the Saw franchise. This is, I think, actually the 10th movie. 1 is just an excellent horror movie in and of itself. Like, it is a real movie, great horror movie. It's not the best acted, but it's really effective.
Carrie Elways is kind of weird in it.
He's kind of weird, and the other guy who's Lee Winnell, who fan favorite, Green Corner favorite Lee Winnell. But I think that is on its own a contained standalone horror movie that is effective. It has some real actors. Danny Glover's in it. It's Carrie Elways.
Ben from Lost.
Yeah, Ben from Lost. That is just a rock solid movie on its own. 2 through 6 are sequels, and I would kind of put them, they kind of like the Rocky sequels, they just kind of go downhill.
Okay.
They're all fine.
Okay.
They're all fine. Like, none of them are like way worse than the rest. But they're all kind of in the same bundle of Saw sequels, and they just repeat the same thing. They get more grandiose, the acting gets more hammy, the actors get worse, the plot line gets increasingly convoluted and ridiculous, but it's fun.
Okay.
Like, there's no... If you enjoy Saw 2, there's no reason not to watch like 4, 5,
Right, you
and
just
6.
get more of it.
They're not like way worse.
Right.
And then since Saw, so there was Saw 6 and there was Saw 3D, and then since then they've been kind of trying to reboot it.
The spin-offs, right?
They've been doing kind of, so they did Jigsaw, which they didn't tell you during that movie whether it was a prequel or a reboot or what, and then that's kind of the plot of it. You find out, that's like the twist.
Okay.
Then they did Spiral, which is the Chris Rock one that is like a years later, totally different tone.
Right.
That one didn't work awesome for me.
Yeah, I heard that mixed stuff on that one.
So the way I would describe Saw 10, Saw X, they finally sat down and figured this dang thing out. Okay. They sat down together and were like, okay guys, like let's stop just like farting stuff out. Let's actually have a chat here. What works about the Saw franchise?
Right.
And let's do that.
Right.
And I think they nailed it. I mean, this is not an incredible movie, but for Saw and for what I like about Saw, which I mean, obviously the traps are like a big part of it, and they need something to tie all that together. That's the main thing of the movie.
Yeah.
Tobin Bell is the best actor. Like, he's the most compelling thing
He's
about
so
Saw.
good in this movie.
It's like, it's kind of a tough statement on him that he's just perfectly cast in this role, but he is.
He's amazing. Like, I found the first half of the movie isn't even a horror movie. It's just about this old man's search for his cure for cancer. And I was totally engrossed by it. And then when the Saw trap started, I was like, oh yeah, it's a Saw movie.
And that's what I loved about this, is they sat down and were like, okay, what works? Okay, everyone loves Tobin Bell. He's amazing as Jigsaw. What if we make him the protagonist?
Yeah.
And then someone's like, but sir, he's the most twisted, demented psychopath ever put to screen. It's like, yeah, but we'll make him sympathetic. We'll get him.
We'll make him torture worse people than him.
But like, not even really.
The one is
the
bad.
one's pretty bad. Like, that's the thing that I was impressed by this movie, is that it worked. They made, like, I've seen all of them. I know all the Jigsaw stuff and all the lore. And like, I was there. I was like, yeah, you get him.
The only thing I have not provided is your anesthetic. But trust me, you will want to remain alert.
Yeah.
Like, that like, poor Mexican lady who, like,
she did
scammed
not deserve
you.
it.
Like, dude, I was there for it. Like, it worked. And I was impressed that they were able to make Jigsaw, like Tobin Bell's Jigsaw, the protagonist, and have it work this well.
It's almost crazy they haven't done it sooner.
Yeah.
Because he's such a charismatic actor.
Well, he dies in Saw 3. Which, as soon as they did that, they were like, oh, crap.
Because this is between 1 and 2?
I think so. The continuity of 1's a little messed up, but like, it might be before 1. No. It's at least intermittent with 1, because Amanda gets recruited in 1.
She showed up, and I'm like...
And it's like not the same actress.
No, it is.
Is it?
Yeah, she's just older and has a terrible wig.
Okay, fair enough.
She's the head trap lady, right?
Yeah. So she was like his apprentice in the first 2, but I think making Jigsaw the protagonist of this movie, and having so much of the movie be about him as a character, was brilliant. Like, I think that was so well executed. And then also this movie, I thought, did the best job with the traps of anything in a while.
Yeah.
It's weird to talk about the quality of Saw traps. That's just kind of like an odd...
It's a strange place to be in, but...
It's like I was taking notes about this, and I was like, this is just like a hard...
Good bone marrow suction.
Yeah. But I think it is important. Like, that's why you're coming to these movies, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, like, Saw 1, they're more toned down, but they work as, like, a real movie. It's, like, more grounded, and, like, you very much picture yourself. Saw 6...
People who hate horror movies say it's more of a thriller.
Yeah.
It's a horror movie.
It's a horror movie.
But it's, like, it's so
stuff.
good that people don't want to acknowledge it as a horror movie.
Yeah, and, like, the craziest thing in that is the reverse bear trap, right?
Yeah.
And it's, like... Or, like, a guy cutting his leg off, and, like... By 6, it's like the merry-go-round and like the guy climbing 100 feet in the air, and there's like entire amusement parks, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's insane. And then I think that Spiral, which is the most recent reboot attempt with Chris Rock, it kind of went too far the other way, where the traps were like, it tried a little too hard to be a real movie, and the traps were not interesting to me. Like, there was a couple that were fine.
Okay.
But on the whole, it was an okay movie that wasn't a great Saw movie.
Got it.
This one, I think they sat down and like really hammered out, and again, I don't want to like dissect, pun intended, like why these worked, but every trap in this was basically every trap was like actually scary. It like tickled that like visceral, like ugh part of my brain. I was compelled. They were clever. It was really well done.
Yeah.
Like I thought they did a great job with that.
I had fun with the traps. My headline for this movie, even though I knew you were going to have one, was Nathan Fielder's worst prank yet. Because the con is like something out of the rehearsal. They go to such lengths. But I found the con really compelling, and it felt like a genuine thing that an old person would fall for. Because when it started happening, I'm like, this isn't Big Pharma's after us. I'm like, who wrote this script? And I'm like, oh, they're scamming an old person.
Yeah.
That is what they'd say. So I had a lot of fun with it. I think it was good. I think that Saw has become a genre of itself. That is like, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, oh, this looks like a made-for-TV movie from 2003. But I think that's because they're trying to make it look like Saw, and they're using the same editing techniques, and they're like writing the script like, what does a Saw movie sound like? So it's almost like a weird time capsule of like the first Saw, where it's almost like it's shooting itself in the foot in a couple areas, but it's to make it more like a Saw movie. And then when the traps start, you're kind of, the whole audience is like, yeah, like it's like a sporting event. Like it's almost like they've distilled out what makes a Saw movie, and then they just wrote like a solid one. But it's weird how it's become its own like micro genre.
I think that's bang on. I think that's bang on, and I think Spiral is what happens if you don't do that.
Right.
Because I don't think Spiral was a perfect execution of this, but I think Spiral was like, okay, we're gonna make a Saw movie, but we're gonna make it kind of its own thing and like update it a little more realistic. We're not gonna do the Saw things. I don't think it worked.
Yeah.
And Saw X, I thought worked brilliantly. Like I did so much fun.
Want to see a guy get his eyes sucked out of his head?
It was just a dream sequence. It's fine.
Yeah, I guess it was a dream sequence.
It does happen though.
Well, this is a good segue talking about horrible bodily mutilation for me into my second. What I want to talk about
today.
Let's talk about Terrifier.
Ooh, let's do it.
Specifically, Terrifier 2.
Please welcome Art the Clown.
Terrifier 2. A movie I enjoyed so much, I'm probably on an FBI watch list.
That's excellent.
Now, I was reluctant to talk about this because I do feel like it's almost worthy of a deep dive or a discussion, but I think you might hate these movies, and I also don't have time for it. So we're going to talk about Terrifier today. We still might talk about it more later. It's directed by Damien Leone. Little interesting backstory. So this guy's, it's kind of like Hell House. This guy's only done Art the Clown.
Right.
He made a short film called Ninth Circle, which had Art the Clown in it. It was an online success. Then a producer was making an anthology Halloween movie, and they're like, hey, we really like that short of yours. Can we use it in our anthology movie? And he's like, yes, on the condition I can direct the rest of the movie. So he directed the wraparound, the second segment, which kind of sucked, and then the third segment, which was called Terrifier, another short film, and that was called All Hallows Eve. But all the segments have Art the Clown in it.
Okay.
Then he made Terrifier, a full-length version of the Terrifier short.
And I'm aware of this. I've not seen any of this.
And Terrifier 1 I had fun with, but it's like a movie where every time Art the Clown is on screen, you are like, your eyes are glued to the screen. He's such a compelling villain. He's funny. He's scary. The kills are really good. Everything outside of that looks like a low-budget porno. It's not well directed. It's very poorly acted.
Sure.
He's trying to go for this retro 70s grindhouse look, but it's very clearly like a 4K digital camera with a film grain effect on top. It doesn't...
I've seen clips, and it's an interesting...
It's crazy, the disparity in quality between the Art the Clown scenes and everything else.
Okay.
Hey, handsome. Cut it out. My friend wants your number. Kill you.
And it makes sense. This guy was a special effects guy. He was like doing practical gore effects on movies and decided he wanted to make his own movie. So he basically figured out what kills he wanted to do and how he'd orchestrate them. And he worked his way backwards to make a movie.
Right.
And I respect the hell out of that. Like, this guy has self-taught himself how to direct movies. So Terrifier 2, what I want to talk about, I watched this a couple weeks ago. It's like Terrifier 1 again, but they've improved in every single category. They got good actors. The direction is dramatically improved. It looks really good. It actually looks like more of a throwback 70s style movie. It's well lit with like gaudy blue-red lights. Art the Clown is like even better. The kills are better. It's got like, it does this weird thing because I think Art the Clown is a genuine contender to be entering into like the slasher hall of fames with Jason, with Freddy. I think he's gonna get there. He's that good.
What's like his thing?
He stalks people with a garbage bag full of torture tools and then kills them.
Right.
And the stalking sequences are great.
So is it just like the comedy of it? Like it's just like the levity he kind of brings while being horrifying?
Yeah, he's like he really screws with people a lot.
Okay, like versus like Freddy Krueger, right?
It's very, I'd say he's probably the most similar. I actually said, when I finished Terrifier 2, I said, this is like if Nightmare on Elm Street was directed by Tim and Eric. That's how I describe Terrifier.
Okay.
So I think that should give you a perfect synopsis of what it's like. But yeah, Terrifier 2 just really impressed me. And those other franchises, you got the first 3 or 4, and they're kind of all the same movie.
Yeah.
Like, they do it again. Like, Friday the 13th. Summer Camp Kills.
7 that are the same.
Summer Camp Kill. And then second one, kids go back to summer camp, Jason kills them.
Yeah.
They're so on, so on. And then by like 9, they send Jason to space.
Yeah.
Terrifier, he knows that that's where this is gonna go.
Right.
He just jumps, he shortcuts it. Terrifier 2, we got warrior princesses. We've got weird lore about him being a creation of an artist's imagination. They go for, there's a magical sword.
Okay.
he's going for it.
This is much more interesting to me than I was previously.
Terrifier 3 comes out, I think, this Halloween, and he fights Santa Claus. That's
Okay,
what we
good.
know about it. So I love this movie. I think it's a blast, and I'm excited to see what comes next. I need to put the disclaimer out. This movie's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's the most graphic, over-the-top kills. I'd say probably more so than Saw,
Right.
in terms of just being gross out. But it's doing it on purpose. It's a throwback to the exploitation, gore, grindfest movies of the 70s. It's
Yeah.
not trying to tell you a message. It's just pure entertainment. It's just
Right.
stupid fun. And I had a blast with it. I'm excited to see where it goes next. And it's a really fun movie.
In my head, I only thought of this as, like, I thought it was a lot more, like, gross out as opposed to, like, a grindhouse homage, and I wasn't picturing this much artistry to it.
Yeah.
Like, I think the only thing I've seen, I think it's Terrifier 2, I'll just say the salt. That's the only thing I've seen.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me to just be like, okay, probably not for me. It's not that I was, like, horribly upset, it's just that, like, if this is what this movie's doing, do it to somebody
But
else.
I'll say when the salt comes up and you've watched so much of the movie, it's actually hilarious when it
Okay.
does happen. This movie's also too long. This
Okay.
movie's like 2.5 hours.
Oh.
There's no reason for it to. It should be like 90 minutes.
Right.
That's just unexcusable. It's way too long. So that's a pure gripe. But
Okay, so the next movie I wanted to talk about, which I'm wondering if you're going to get me again, that you've seen
I've
it.
only seen Saw X from your
Okay,
list.
so the next one I'm going to talk about is a little joint called Abigail.
You know the rules. No real names, no backstories, no cell phones.
So whose kid is she?
A very wealthy man who's about to be $50 million poorer.
A lot of stupid crap fails to sink what is a really fun movie.
Okay.
And that's more or less what I think most people would expect going in. I mean, this does not bill itself as high concept, like fresh, clever. Like this is a teenager horror movie, and it's a good one. It's fun.
Okay.
That's the most important thing. And I'm gonna say a bunch of negative stuff, but the headline and the most important thing is that this is fun, and you'll probably have fun watching it.
Okay.
The stupid crap. I mean, the first thing that I want to point to, and the first thing most people are gonna notice, is that the first 20 minutes of this movie, it's trying to set up a mystery. They don't think you know that the little ballerina girl is the bad guy.
They really screwed up the trailer.
Yeah. Like this is no fault to the filmmakers. The producers boned them on this one.
Yeah.
But
The poster is the little girl, like.
it's called Abigail, and yeah, like literally that's what happened, and I just feel really bad.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
honestly, they did a good job. Like because I rewound it. Once I realized, and I'm like, why are they? Oh, I guess they haven't seen the trailer. They don't know that she's a vampire yet. But I like rewound it a little bit, and I really tried to like put myself in the mindset. Okay, you think she's just a little girl. So real quick premise: she's a rich kid. This Gus Fring from Breaking Bad hires 6 people to kidnap her for ransom. Turns out she's a vampire. That's it. The first 20 minutes where they don't know this, I'm pretty sure it would have been a compelling mystery, and they would have done a good job with it.
Okay.
If it had been called like Kidnap Gone Wrong and the poster was nothing. Like, this would have been good because they're trying to set up that that's like her dad has this mysterious hitman and like the kills are not vampire-y to start. And I think it would have worked.
Okay.
And I think they got boned by the producers, and that was too bad.
Right.
So the performances in this are actually pretty good.
Dan Stevens.
Okay, this is crazy. I had to look this up because I didn't believe it the first time I saw it. This is my first Dan Stevens joint.
That is crazy.
I have never seen anything he's been. I didn't watch Downton Abbey. I never saw The Guest.
The Guest, one of the greatest Halloween movies ever made. Just throw it out there.
Yeah, like I had never, like I know how much you like him. I know of him. I'd never seen anything.
Okay.
And he's weird in this movie. He's the lead, kinda. He makes weird choices. I don't think the character totally came together, and I definitely don't think it's all his fault. He's at least interesting to watch, and he's fun. Abigail was great. She's this little kid, this little Irish kid who got discovered. Alicia Weir. She's excellent.
I'm glad we discovered her.
Yeah, I mean,
She's in the woods.
yeah. Well, she was in like local Dublin theater like
sure.
before this. And a lot of this movie is like, it's not a tight script. A lot of this movie is just dumb, contrived scene. Like, they established very early that she's omnipotent. She can just do anything. She could kill all of them in 1 second.
Got it.
And that really kind of diffuses a lot of the tension throughout the movie, and it makes the plot kind of not make a lot of sense.
Right.
Like, if you think too hard about it, it all falls apart. So a lot of this movie is just holding on her as she's delivering sinister dialogue while you're fully aware that she's just monologuing for the hell of it. Despite that, it's still entertaining.
Okay.
Like it's
and it's like a fully locked, like closed house.
Yeah.
Like a bottle movie essentially.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And they're locked in, and so yeah, like in terms of the plot, again, I want to say this was a fun movie and I enjoyed it. But this bills itself as a horror comedy but it's never funny or scary. And that was tough.
That is tough.
That was tough. None of the humor landed for me. Okay. It was like there was some lighthearted stuff, but it was closer to like Marvel, where it's like not actually funny or clever, but it's a lot more.
You're like, oh, that's a joke.
Yeah, it's like, well, that happened. It's like,
right.
Okay. And then in terms of the horror, like I said, they established that she's so powerful so early on that there's just nothing, and they're just locked in this house, and you're just kind of waiting for her to murder them all.
Right.
And like they do an okay job of like, okay, here's the thing they're gonna try, but like not even really.
Okay.
Compared to like 30 Days of Night, I think did a better job of like we kind of know the next thing.
Right.
So that diffused a lot of the horror. There's some gross stuff. The only place I could see this actually getting scary is like it is gross enough to the point of body horror a couple of times.
Wow, that's surprising.
But like, yeah, it's gory. It's like gross.
And it's PG-13?
No, it's R.
Oh, it's R.
It's hard R, and it's gory and it's gross.
It seems like a PG-13 movie.
It does, and I think you could have gotten it there without losing much. But
right.
like, again, one of the only like scary parts is some of like the very gross gore. And like there's a lot of blood, and like there's points where it's more comedic than scary.
Okay.
Again, but it's not really either. The other guy I want to talk about briefly in this is a fellow by the name of Kevin Durand, who is in it. Not Kevin Durant, Kevin Durand.
I know this name.
He was in Lost. He was in one of the bad X-Men movies. He was in a movie called Smokin' Aces that I really like. You'll know his face.
Okay.
He was just one of the guys, and the reason I wanted to talk about him, he plays a Quebecois man in this movie.
Okay.
Right away, as a Canadian, I was like, that's not a Quebecois accent. He's doing a crap job. But then it kind of hit my head. I'm like, wait a minute, isn't he Canadian? How is he doing this bad a job at a Quebecois accent? I looked it up. He is, in fact, fluent in French, but he's from Thunder Bay.
Okay.
Which is real far the other way.
Yeah.
And they speak very different French up there.
Oh, is he just doing the wrong French?
He's just doing the wrong French. And if they just had hired like Dave Bautista, like somebody who doesn't speak French, they probably would have done Quebecer. But as like a Canadian watching this, he just like, it's a big plot point. He talks a bunch about, oh, I'm from Quebec, but it's like not it at all. It was just this weird thing. Anyway, that's just this weird thing. He was fun. He was one of the better parts.
I fucking hate ballet.
Saltburn.
Oh.
I think I like you even more than last year's one. You're so,
So what?
real.
Evil, sexy people do horrible things to other evil, sexy people, and it's way too long. It's pretty good. So let's talk about Saltburn. Probably one of the most like mainstream movies we're going to talk about today, and I think my only not horror movie, to be honest. I finally watched Saltburn. There was so much buzz about this movie.
Yeah. I have not seen it. I've heard the buzz.
Yeah, so a lot of buzz about this movie.
Bathwater, like that's what I got.
Yo, there's bathwater. A lot of buzz about this movie on mainstream media, Instagram, TikTok. It became one of those kind of zeitgeist movies that everyone latched onto. I don't totally understand why.
Very divisive. There was a lot of like, it's brilliant, it's shocking, and then a lot of it's stupid and boring.
Yeah.
So.
And it's directed by Emerald Fennell, which is apparently her real name. She directed Promising Young Woman, which is a movie that I loved. And when I realized that, I'm like, well, I'm going to watch Saltburn. It wasn't really on my list, but I'm like, let's check it out. I had a night on my own. So I watched Saltburn. I really don't understand why this latched onto the zeitgeist the way it did. I think because it did. Because it was this huge Instagram, TikTok movie. I thought it was going to be very conventional, catchy pop movie.
Right.
And it's not. It's like a very well-directed, slowly paced thriller, which surprised me. Like,
Sure.
I don't understand how, it just seems like a movie that I would like, and I did like it. Overall, I enjoyed it, but usually those movies do not catch on in a weird way. I think it must be a combination of all the young, attractive actors that are very popular right now, and the marketing. This movie caught on. It is a beautifully shot movie. I couldn't believe how good this movie looks. So I think it's 4:3 aspect ratio. It's like square. It's got that old film grain look, and every shot looks like a beautiful photograph. It is like beautifully directed. All the performances are good. And it totally taps into that like animal part of your brain of like being animalistically attracted to someone. Like it really taps into that like nostalgia and like summer love, and just like it perfectly captures all of this in this really
Such a weird specific thing.
I know, and it's so atmospheric, and like you really are along for the ride. Like Barry Keoghan is fantastic in this movie.
Sure.
You're right there with him. You feel so much sympathy for him at the beginning of the movie that you're like instantly drawn in. So overall, I really liked it. I will say this movie, I think because it looks so good and it's so well acted, it's so well directed, so much craft around this movie that I think I expected it to be this like important Oscar baity, like heady, artsy fartsy movie.
Like Everything Everywhere All at Once kind of thing.
Yeah, like something that's gonna try to be very pretentious, very over the top. And I think it's just schlock. It's just
closer like Tarantino? Like but not violent?
I don't even know what camp I put this in, but it's just like, it's like escapism sex schlock. Like basically a B movie.
Like Gaspar Noé? Like, is that...
It's an exploitation film.
Okay.
It's basically like young hot people doing horrible things, getting into crazy sexual situations, this like crazy summer of love and violence and
you ever see
betrayal.
Spring Breakers? Because that's kind of weird.
It's probably like that. I haven't seen it. But it's just schlock in beautiful packaging. It's like really well-crafted schlock. And once I accepted that, I had so much more fun with this movie.
Okay.
Because you're basically it's like a guilty pleasure movie that's really well directed.
You're not like looking for the big, heady, like philosophical conversation. You're just enjoying the
You're just enjoying the ride.
Yeah.
I will say, much like Terrifier 2, way too long. This movie's unnecessarily long. It needed to be trimmed down. But I was like engrossed the whole time. I found all the characters really engaging and interesting. There's some really messed up sequences that are going to stick in my mind, and the score I have listened to pretty much on loop since I saw it. Not just the score, but also the music in it. So I really enjoyed Saltburn, way more than I thought I would. It's not the movie I expected, but I had a really fun time with it, and I'm very excited to see what she does next, given that we've got Promising Young Woman and then this. I think she's a great director, and I'm really curious to see what she's going to do next. Yeah, that's Saltburn. I would recommend it.
Now I want to watch it. And I appreciate the disclaimer, because I've had a lot of trouble recently with some of our movies that I go into with the wrong mindset.
Yeah.
And like I'm thinking about the wrong thing.
This is schlock.
Okay.
This is classy porn.
I appreciate that. All right, so I brought 3 horror movies here today, and I'm going to talk about the last of them 3.
All right.
And it is, I think I'm kind of running the gamut here pretty well, because I did 2 kind of high-budget mainstream ones, and now I'm going to do one that you've heard of, but the opposite. So I got Starry Eyes.
Hello, Sarah. We'd like to see you again. And Sarah, this will be different.
Audition anxiety as body horror, and it cost how much? The answer is like 50 grand.
Oh, it's low.
It's low.
Okay.
And that's like my most important. So I thought this was a really, really solid horror movie.
I'll say I have not seen this,
Yeah,
but it's been on my list forever.
I'm not going to spoil much of it. So the idea, it's basically the same premise as The Neon Demon, which I loved.
Okay.
Where it is a young woman getting thrown into the wood chipper that is Hollywood as a young woman.
Right.
And sort of the artistry comes from how they portray that. It could not be more different than The Neon Demon and how they portray that, because The Neon Demon is like a LSD trip with...
That's exploitation schlock.
Yeah, and I loved it.
Yeah, me too. I really like The Neon Demon.
It's a music video. It's like pink and blue, neon, synths, like there's barely any dialogue. Starry Eyes is the opposite, where it is very tight, personal. You are right there with this woman, feeling what she feels as the camera's like grounded, exactly. The camera's right in her face, like you feel everything she's feeling. It is one of the most like visceral movies I have ever seen.
Wow.
And I think it doesn't do that much, right? It's not like a crazy over the top, but it is so incredibly effective at what it does. And like I need to come back to it right away. This movie was made for, I think they said we got a touch over $53,000 to make this. I think there are a lot of horror movies where I watch it and I'm like, they did a pretty good job despite the budget. This one, I didn't even consider that while I was watching it. Like I didn't there's not like CGI, right? Like I didn't think that it was a very expensive movie, but I thought it was like going to be like Hush or something like that. Where I thought this was like a studio movie.
Like $1 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and at no point was I like, they were clever about getting around the budget. I didn't even think about that the whole time I was watching the movie. And when I looked it up after, it's a Kickstarter movie.
Oh,
they
wow.
made 50 grand on Kickstarter, and then some low-level producer came in and just like took some cash out of his wallet to get them like a couple more things. And I can't talk about them without spoiling it, but after you watch it, go look up the trivia of how they did a couple of the scenes, because finding out how they did a couple of the things with no budget, it cranks up the respect you have for the movie and for the performers in an incredible way.
Interesting.
So yeah, this movie, I thought it's tight. It tells its story well.
Is it scary?
It is absolutely scary.
Okay.
I would say it is more body horror, like viscerally upsetting than it is like suspenseful scary, but it also gets there.
Okay.
And the one thing that this movie was in danger of kind of becoming torture porn-ish, and it doesn't, because it is just this woman unraveling.
Right.
Like that's the whole premise. You're watching this for an hour as this woman who like starts out as this kind of like nervous, idealistic young lady just descend.
Okay.
It doesn't ever get to the point where you're just like, God, I just like this poor girl. Like, just stop. And the way that, and again, without spoiling, the way that they navigate kind of the last 20 minutes and the ending does a really good job of avoiding that. But if you just want to sit down and watch like a really well executed horror movie that just locks you in and you just feel it, like it just gets you, it just makes like the violence and the upsetting things just like you feel them in your plums, like more than almost anything I've ever seen. It does a really, really good job of that. So like I could see someone watching this and kind of being bored or not connecting with it or just finding it like not, I guess, grandiose enough. But for me, it was, like I really, really liked this, and it was so much more was added to it once I realized it was a Kickstarter movie. And again, how they pulled off some of the stunts is like,
wow. It was on my list, and now it's to the top of my list.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm your girl. I will do whatever it takes for this role.
All right, so next I want to talk about a little movie called One Cut of the Dead. Full disclosure, I don't know how you talk about this movie without spoilers. So this is going to be a full spoiler review of One Cut of the Dead. If you want to avoid spoilers, timestamp is below for the next movie. Just go ahead and skip. Spoiler warning in effect. Spoiler warning for One Cut of the Dead. A movie, about a TV show about a movie, about making a movie. And I'm not joking. One Cut of the Dead is a Japanese horror comedy. It is made by students in a Japanese film school as their capstone project that was so well done, the school managed to get it actually produced and distributed. It cost, the reason I'm bringing it up is you just talked about a $50,000 budget. This was a $20,000 budget. I think it is to date made over $30 million.
That's pretty good.
So they're doing a good job. This group of actors are literally like an acting troupe from this school, and this was their final project. Like, they submitted this for marks, which is just amazing when you actually watch the movie. But what this movie is, and I don't even know, this is why I can't do it without spoilers. I need to explain to you what this movie is, just because you're never going to watch this.
No.
The first 30 minutes is one take. Actually one take, no hidden cuts. And it starts as a zombie movie. This girl running away from a zombie. It's super cheesy, super low budget. Someone calls cut and it pulls out, and a director starts directing people. So it's a movie about making a zombie movie. But then real zombies show up. Okay. So the director chose a location that he researched actually had zombies because he wanted more realistic reactions from his actors.
As one does.
So it's like while the actors are at the craft services table, real zombies attack. They think it's part of the movie, and it's like this hilarious kind of slapsticky 30-minute one take of zombies attacking people on the set of zombie movie, which is already pretty unique, especially because the director's running around filming everything,
right.
And he's like, "Never, don't stop shooting," and like chasing them while they're being chased by real zombies. It's a 30-minute one take, and I'm like, this is pretty good. This feels like a student film, but it's like interesting, it's kind of funny. But there's all these weird inconsistencies. There's like moments where people seem like they don't know their line, or there's like a moment people like look off screen and then look back, and then they like seem to start improvising, and you're like, maybe it's just because it's a student film, maybe it's like Japanese comedy beats I'm not getting.
Yeah.
But you're kind of just like, that's kind of strange. So 30 minutes in, it cuts to black and then goes 1 month earlier. And the actors we just saw in the movie are now shot in like full HD camera in Japan. And this guy is going to a TV studio, Zombie TV, and they want to make a live broadcast, one take episode, 30 minutes, of a movie about making a zombie movie.
カット割りなしのワンカット。最初から最後まで一度もカメラを止めません。
そんな無茶な企画あるわけないでしょ。
So then the movie becomes about the creation of the movie we just watched and how they did it in one take, but actually also how they did it in real life because they actually did it in one take. So it's like showing when there was those weird inconsistencies, it's showing someone off screen like the actor is drunk, improvise, and like shit like that. Like it's completely off, like it's crazy, and all the inconsistencies are answered, and everything about the production that could go wrong goes wrong.
Right.
The director was not supposed to play the director in the movie, but the guy didn't show up. So the director has to play the director in the movie. His wife has to fill in for one of the other roles because she just happens to know the script. And it's like, that's then the rest of the movie. But even within that, it's a movie about that. So it's done as a Japanese comedy where people like behind the scenes keep looking at the camera and it plays like slapstick music. So it's a movie and it's just like, it's crazy. It's one of the most creative things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I will say I appreciate and respect this more than I liked it.
Right.
Because you basically either are gonna like the first 30 minutes or the last 30 minutes, but you're not gonna like both.
Yeah.
Because either you wanted a zombie movie or you wanted a meta art film about making zombie movies. Those are two separate groups of people that want entertainment. And so this movie, if you like movies about making movies, behind the scenes stuff, if you're kind of like a horror nut, you're probably gonna find this fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy. It actually got me. I've never been got this hard by a movie with the hard cut to 1 month earlier.
Yeah, that feels like exclusively a movie for people like you who have seen everything else
already. Yeah. But the fact this was a student film,
yeah,
kudos to these guys. They did a great job.
I respect the hell out of that.
It's tough for me to like recommend it, but I wanted to talk about it, and I had a blast with it. So good job, and I should say the director's name is Shinichiro Ueda. I don't know if he was one of the actors. I actually forgot to check, but
that's fair.
Incredible job, and I hope these folks have a successful career in movie making after this because they've got a lot of money now.
All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, I got through all my horror for now. I'm gonna talk about a little joint called Invincible.
When I was a kid, I always wanted to be my dad. What if that happens? What if I become him and I don't even know it?
Modern, fresh, and creative, or overstuffed crap? You decide, but it's both. So, Invincible, they just dropped the second season. It's an Amazon Prime show. It is an animated superhero show based on comics. Season 1, I really liked most of it. It just feels really fresh, especially with all the superhero stuff that's been going on. It exists in a very unique space of being hyper-violent cartoons, but like still kinda kiddie. It's like for people who grew up watching cartoons but are now grown-ups. Season 1, I would say the first and last episodes of season 1. Have you seen it?
I've seen the first episode of season 1, and I liked it, and then I never watched another episode.
So the first and last episodes of season 1 are borderline like masterpieces. Like I think they're both great, and they kind of represent the bookends of season 1. There's a through line plot. I'm not going to spoil much of it, really any of it, but there's the first and last. The start and end of season 1 are like a through plot that is cohesive. Everything else is kind of based around. The middle of season 1 is very wandery. And that's kind of my headline where I say, is it like creative and fresh or just overstuffed crap? The middle part of season 1 is dancing that line. It is very deliberately making a choice to not just be one straightforward narrative. It is on purpose that every episode you just are dropped in and they're like, we're fighting Dr. Roboculus now.
Okay.
It's like, and you're like, I don't know who this is. And like even the good guys, they'll just be like new good guys that are on the team now.
Like a kid's cartoon.
Yeah, but like even more, like it's more like just grabbing any random issue of like a DC comic or Marvel comic, right? Where it's, and I should say that it is like very on the nose parodying, like aping a lot of Marvel and DC stuff to the point where it's like, this is not Superman, this is not Spider-Man. Like, it's doing that on purpose, like even more so than something like The Boys. And it's relying on you kind of like being familiar to a degree with like the MCU, for example, or the comics more so. And it's interesting. Season 1, like the middle part didn't work great for me. It's definitely not like amazing, but it's fun. And the idea behind, we're just gonna drop you in, you know a couple of the characters, but now they're just in this scenario, they're trying to get this guy. We're not filling in the blanks. It's just gonna be fun action, like surprisingly gory and like well done action for what it is. And there's some cool superhero stuff, and we will tie it back to kind of the characters' motivations a little bit, but it's just vignettes, like it's just stuff.
Okay.
That's season 1. And it works because of the bookends of the main character of Mark and his dad and like the story between them. Season 2 is just the middle part. They don't do the through line, and it is too far the other way. Like, I'll just say it right now, like, Season 2, they gave up on having, like, there is some continuing narratives, but barely. It is just 8 episodes of throwing crap at the wall. And, like, any individual scene is fine. It's still great action, the characters are good, the voice acting is amazing, the animation's amazing. But Season 2 is, like I watched these episodes, like, sitting down and focused within a week. And, like, I would, like, the next morning, I would start the episode, and I'd be like, I got no freaking clue what happened last episode.
Sure.
I got nothing. And like, if somebody told me that they that this really worked for them as like something kind of creative and fresh, I'd believe them. And I think that the creators were going for this. I just don't think it worked in season 2. I think it took a nosedive from season 1, and they strayed too far away from having something to cling to.
Okay.
Because like these character beats are just not landing when like, I don't even remember why they're here. They don't explain like what the hell's going on. And there's just like, there's aliens and there's kaijus and there's like 10 different villains, and it's like 6 hours of show. And there's like 50 villains and 10 main characters, and like a main character will die who showed up 2 episodes ago with no explanation, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then it's like a fake out and they're back, and I'm like, yay. I got nothing. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I'm conflicted. Like I did think about this show, and I very much enjoyed certain parts of it. Like it is like when I say it's for kids who grew up watching cartoons who are grown-ups now, or it's also kind of for people who are like tired of Marvel, but like superheroes, right? And I would say I'm both of those. And because of that, I really like certain parts of Invincible, but season 2, it flanderized itself.
Interesting.
It lost the plot a little bit, but I'm really hopeful. I want season 3 to narrow its focus a little bit, give me a little more cohesion. Because they are doing one. I mean, with how shows are, it's probably coming out in 2028. Like, that just is what it is, and I'm gonna have to Google everything that happened. But if they kind of bring it back and continue to bring some of these really cool, fresh ideas, like loving animation and fun stuff, and they just like tie it together a little bit more, give me a little more to latch onto, and just stop throwing, like, there's like major fourth wall breaks that just show up out of nowhere. There's an episode where it's like the second last episode where there's like major conflicts set up, where they go to Comic-Con and he spends 10 minutes talking to a comic book writer about how tough it is to get an animated show about superheroes made. And it's just like, what are you doing? You have 6 hours of runtime and you haven't resolved any of your character
Keep it moving.
Like, what are you doing? Like, it's wild.
It's gonna be wild when in 10 years there are shows that are parodying Invincible and The Boys.
Yeah.
And we're at the next level of remove from superhero shows.
Yeah.
Because it's weird that we're in this wave of like most of the popular superhero content is commentary about superhero content.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre.
Well, I think we are gonna swing back to normal, where I think like the next big one has to be like Christopher Reeve's Superman. Like, I think the James Gunn Superman is gonna be like, I'm here to save the day, and like so straight up, because that's the only place you can go now.
It's like, we're doing a Superman movie. What's the thing? It's like, no, it's just a Superman movie. People are like,
It's kind of like the whole like Pierce Brosnan James Bond, and then Austin Powers, and then we were like centered again.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm expecting.
Well, let's keep our TV train going, because I want to talk about Three Body Problem.
Ooh, okay.
someone or something is targeting scientists.
The ending of Game of Thrones is one of the greatest blunders in the history of television. So far, Three Body Problem is pretty good. Of course, bring this up because Three Body Problem is written and directed, or written by D&D, the guys who made Game of Thrones. So they are responsible for some of the best premiere television to grace our generation and the worst finale of all time.
Really bad.
And have a very strange reputation for that reason. So they did the Three Body Problem show, Netflix original show. It is based on a Chinese trilogy of novels, which I have read and loved. I think I burned through these books faster than any books in my adult life. I think I read them in like a week or two. I just totally ate them up. They're totally up my alley of like super grounded, hard sci-fi that's very like science-y. I'll get into that a bit because that is one of the downfalls of the book. The science is really interesting. He picks things that we don't understand enough about in the scientific community and then fills in the gaps with assumptions and then has all the real science follow the actual rules, but takes liberties with things we don't know enough about to say couldn't happen to create really crazy sci-fi concepts that are still grounded in reality.
The Expanse does that as well, and it just seems so hard.
It does seem very hard.
Writing sci-fi that like actual physicists would be able to just like enjoy and not just poke all kinds of holes in.
Right.
Just seems so hard.
And the author Xixin Liu, I believe is an engineer, so he was very focused on the science, but he is not focused on is the characters. There's no characters in these books. Every character has a new main character and they all suck. And
every chapter?
Every book.
Okay.
Like basically each book, there's a new character introduced that wander through the plot and are just our vehicle to introduce scientific concepts. It's like the opposite of The Expanse.
Right.
You don't have the crew.
Yeah.
The crew is the heart and soul of The Expanse and the sci-fi comes on the side. The Three Body Problem is like, there's no characters and then there's all this sci-fi stuff they show to you. So that's kind of the root of the show, of the book. The show, I'd say, improves on that dramatically. So this is a very uneven adaptation. There are areas I think it dramatically improved over the books, and then other ones where it blundered, which left a very strange taste in my mouth. Because overall, I enjoyed the show. I'm very excited for season 2. They basically took all the lack of characters from the book, and they just wrote new characters for the show. Each book, there's just a new character, you don't know who they are, you don't care. The show introduces all of them at the beginning, even the ones they won't need until the second and third book bits, and finds things for them to do and turns them into interesting characters that will then play into the plot in interesting ways. Even though not all of those characters are great, some of them are. So they did some good stuff with the characterization.
Well, this is what D&D did well with Game of Thrones. I mean, like it wasn't just everything they took right out of the books was good.
Right.
When they were kind of weaving around and like finding, like filling in blanks, like tightening stuff, combining characters, they were really good at that.
Like there's a whole segment from the beginning of the second book, which this show does get into the second book. There's a character in the book, Yun Tanming, and it's this very interesting, weird story. I won't spoil anything, but it's a weird, interesting story, but you don't know who this guy is. I didn't care about him. And even though they kind of make it matter later in the books, it's still like, who the hell is this guy? Why is the second book opening with this character I've never heard of? The show adapts Yun Tanming's story into a character named Will, who is an excellent character, and some of his major scenes moved me to tears, and I was floored by it. Other characters they introduce, namely Augie, are terrible and feel like you're watching like CW trash. So that
you're on Greyjoys.
Yeah, the disparity in quality between certain aspects of the show is crazy. Like elements of how they explain the sci-fi concepts are really good. Like there was certain scenes where they're showing like really mind-bending stuff, and I'm like, you know what? That was a good way to explain it succinctly, enough for the audience to get what you mean.
Right.
And then other concepts, they completely screw up, and they let the like science becomes magic in some of the areas, and it's just like stuff's happening that makes no sense, and physicists would be like screaming at their screens. So overall, it's very uneven, but I think it nails the big picture stuff enough that I am excited to see where it goes. And they clearly are very interested in the really weird places this series is gonna go. I don't think another book series other than Dune has the scope of the Three Body Problem books. They are like, by the third book, you don't know it's not even, you're worlds apart from the first book, right?
And we see you commenters, we know that it's out, we know the Zele sequence and all this, we know it's out there, but we're talking like mainstream stuff, like stuff that you could find at the front of the Barnes & Noble.
And and this gets really weird. And they introduce stuff in the show that tells me they're going to adapt all that.
Okay.
They're like setting up for some of the craziness. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Is anyone in it that I'd know? I think like Wong from Marvel
And
is
he
in
is
it, right?
the best.
Okay. That dude's a great actor. I think his last name is actually Wong, right?
Benedict Wong,
Yeah.
He plays Dasha in the show, who's the only interesting character in the books.
Okay.
He brings them even more to life in the show. He's fantastic. Liam Cunningham is in it as
Sir
a
Davos.
very important character named Thomas Wade. And again, they greatly improve on that character. Not improve, but they give that character a lot more. And every time he's on screen, he plays like a real dick.
Dude's so good.
Like a real like British spy who will do anything to get the job done kind of guy, and he's fantastic. Jonathan Pryce is in it as Mike Evans, and he's fantastic. So there's these big names and incredible performances, then there's these terrible plot lines and like brutal CW level characters. I guess that's just kind of D&D. They not everything works in Game of Thrones either, but I'm excited to see where it goes. And overall, I was very pleased with season 1, I have to say. It's a very hard book to adapt. I think they did a good job.
The three-body problem, a lot of peaks and valleys. I think this is a good segue because I'm about to talk about something that has literally no peaks or valleys whatsoever. And this is a weird pick, but I will justify it. I'm going to talk about Death on the Nile.
You must meet Hercule Poirot.
My congratulations, madame.
Merci.
Well, he's only the greatest detective alive.
Too bland to even be a decent dad movie. So, why did I pick this? Why did I pick a 3-year-old mediocre movie that some people went and saw that seems very straightforward? It's because I want to like these movies so bad, and they won't let me. And I want to talk for a little bit about that and about why that is. So this is the second of 3 movies Kenneth Branagh has made and starred in, directed and starred in. They are star-studded casts, mid-budget movies, big theatrical releases, based on Agatha Christie novels. They're Hercule Poirot is like her main character. He had like 100 books. It was adapted into a very long-running British TV show that apparently is very good. And Kenneth Branagh decided he wanted to bring him to the big screen and make a couple bucks.
This is a mustache guy.
Mustache guy, exactly. That's his entire character in these movies. I like dad movies. I like, if it gets above the level of those like Bruce Willis, John Cusack geezer teasers, if it's a little above that to where they actually try and make a movie, I like those.
It's like one of the 5 movies where people fly planes in the last couple of years?
Yes, exactly. I like sitting down and watching those. They're the right level of engagement and but the thing that makes or breaks these movies is you gotta do 1 or 2 things really well. You gotta find your thing.
Okay.
One of my favorite examples is a movie that no one in the world remembers called American Assassin, that because of another movie wasn't playing, I saw in theaters. Dylan O'Brien and Michael Keaton. It's a it's a mediocre dad movie through and through, but Michael Keaton's friggin' unhinged in it.
You think you can slice a man's throat right here like this? Well, in the movies.
And that's just fun. The rest of it is fine. There's some decent camera work, decent action, it's fine. But Michael Keaton, they just like set him loose.
Okay.
He's just chewing his way through the movie.
Now you want to kill those mean old terrorists. You think that qualifies you for my selection process?
Or like Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips.
Like the lead pirate and Tom Hanks' performances are worth watching the movie for, even though it's a boring dad movie.
Tom Hanks is the king of this.
Yes, he's the king of dad movies.
He's the king of dad. I mean, I love The Terminal. It's just a boring dad movie, but it's just great to watch. I love that movie.
You don't love The Terminal.
I love The Terminal. I do. I really, really enjoyed watching that movie, and I will.
Okay.
This is why I wanted to talk about Death on the Nile, because I watched Murder on the Orient Express and I struggled through it and convinced myself I liked it, even though like it immediately slipped my mind after.
Right.
I had to try 3 times to get through Death on the Nile, and I just kept beating my head against it because it is just, they don't do anything more than the bare minimum in this movie. It is just so exactly B- at every single aspect. It doesn't look that good. No character is particularly good. There's no music. There's like no creativity. There's just not like, it's all okay. It's okay from start to finish, and he just refuses to do anything that actually stands out from just a sea of okay. And it's wild. Kenneth Branagh, in my head, he is, and this is like mostly, he's a Shakespeare guy.
Yeah.
He's like a
stage actor.
Yeah, he's a stage actor. He's like directed and worked in like mostly Shakespeare stuff in the West End for a long time. Presumably very talented. Like I've seen clips of him doing like Hamlet and King Lear, and he's great. That's his thing. In my head, he had also done a couple of really good movies. Like I kind of think of him as this somewhat prestige director who's like
Thor.
Well, that's the thing. Is I was like, okay, Thor was the wrong project for him, right? Like that did. If you actually go look at his filmography, not really. He's like never done a good movie. The best one would probably be Belfast, which I haven't seen.
Oh, right. I haven't seen it either.
It was like nominated but didn't win a couple Oscars, and the reviews are like okay. I kind of want to watch that because I want to give him some credit.
I want to watch it because my whole family's from Belfast, so there's an interest there. I remember his Hamlet movie being good.
Yeah.
And he stars in it as well. I watched it in high school. I remember being like, eh.
That's the thing. It's like he gets Shakespeare, right? And another decent, like one of his more well-regarded movies, one called Sleuth, that I liked, and that movie is Michael Caine and Jude Law in a room talking at each other for an hour and a half. That's it. No other characters, no other sets. So it's just a play.
It's a play, yeah.
Kenneth Branagh does not get movies. He gets plays. And this is evident with, and this is I think the biggest problem with these adaptations, these Agatha Christie ones. When you are doing a Hamlet and you have Andrew Scott, right? Or you have Colm Feore, or even you have Kenneth Branagh, right? Like you get the same robe they've been using for 30 years, you put him on stage with a skull, and you just let him cook.
Yep.
And that's fine. Kenneth Branagh knows how to do that. That's what they tried to do with these movies, because these are insanely star-studded casts for Orient Express. You let Andrew Scott cook in Hamlet. Letting Russell Brand cook in an Agatha Christie movie with no help from the cinematography and a really bland lead? Don't do that. It's so bad. It feels like watching audition tapes. You're watching all these little clips of like Rose Leslie, Gal Gadot, like Russell Brand, like Letitia Wright, like these like fine actors, but they're just like, okay, here's my accent and this is my character, and I'm just gonna, I don't know where the pistol was, and like that's it. And it's an hour and a half of that.
Sounds like a prank.
It does. And like the reason I'm talking about it is because I wanted so bad for this to just be okay, so that I could just like sit, turn my brain off, check my phone, and tune back in when there's a gunshot. And it was.
It's like the trial of Sisyphus with you in these
shitty
movies.
It really was. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about this and like why that they weren't even able to get to the, like, you think you get an amazing cast for one of the most like beloved authors ever, like Agatha Christie. I think only the Bible has outsold her books, right? These are tight, well-constructed stories that should be compelling of their own merit. And you are getting like insane casts to do this. I should be able to direct this and have this turn out fine, and they didn't.
Got it.
And it's wild.
So are you done, or are you going to watch Death in Venice?
A Haunting in Venice
Haunting in Venice?
Apparent. Like I think if you go on IMDb, it has the best of the three, and I honestly might watch the first 10 minutes and see if they get me, because like.
We're not doing a ranking of these goddamn movies.
We're gonna do a tier list, and they're all just in get a new director.
They're all B-.
And you just have these great actors in these Kenneth Branagh movies that are just doing nothing.
Sounds great.
I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I wanted to get that out of my system. It's been building up for a while.
Wow.
Because I want.
Well, I know what I'm watching tonight.
Yeah, don't watch them. Don't support them until somebody in these projects tries anything at all.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Speaking of dad movies.
Nice.
Kind of. I'll get there eventually. It's going to take some meandering.
All right, do it.
I watched a movie called Bones and All.
I can't help you anymore. I know it's not your fault. You were born this way. You ate them. I believed you had to. I don't know why.
I've heard Timothée Chalamet was a thirst trap. I didn't know they meant a thirst for man meat.
Oh, this one. Yeah.
So Bones and All is directed by, and I will butcher his last name, apologies, Luca Guadagnino. He's, I believe, Italian or Spanish. I think Italian filmmaker. But he has a great resume. He did the Suspiria remake, Call Me By Your Name, this, and the new Zendaya threesome movie, Challengers, which I have not seen.
Apparently it's good. It's just kind of giving Saltburn again.
Yeah, it's giving a bit of that. I'll probably check it out just based on his kind of resume alone. So this is a movie, Bones and All. I do not remember the lead actress's name. I apologize. Here it is. But she stars opposite Timothée Chalamet, and it's a cannibal movie. So it's a movie about, it's kind of a coming of age story. This girl is a cannibal. She's born a cannibal, and it's like, she doesn't want it this.
Right.
She doesn't like that she's this way, but she has this insatiable hunger to eat people.
Yeah.
And that leads to her basically having to run away from home, and it becomes kind of a coming of age, travel across the country story, where she's kind of going on a road trip, she's meeting interesting people, she's into all of these kind of weird circumstances, like any kind of coming of age travel across the US story, right? You meet all these people, but she's a cannibal. She meets Timothée Chalamet, who's also a cannibal. And that's the weird world building in this movie, is that this isn't like she's the only cannibal. It's basically a vampire movie, or like a werewolf movie.
It sounds Stephen King-y.
Yeah, where like all the cannibals know who each other are because they can smell each other.
I smelled you. I didn't know I could do that.
I thought I was the only one. I don't want to hurt anybody.
Famous last words.
So she runs across like other cannibals. And I'd say that as a movie, as like a coming of age narrative, it actually works quite well within that basic structure. It didn't need to be cannibals. It could have been a vampire movie.
Yeah.
They could have been on the run, like bank robbers. This could have been like a Bonnie and Clyde scenario. This could have been a drug addict scenario. But the cannibalism thing, I think, is just to draw people into the theater because it's so crazy. But the reality, it's just that there's these two people that are like each other and they can relate to each other because they both have this weird thing that unites them. And it works well as kind of a coming of age story. It's very compelling. I was genuinely entertained by her whole journey. She does a really good job. Talking about dad movies. Mark Rylance is in this movie.
Okay.
Who I remember kind of breaking out on Bridge of Spies, the ultimate dad movie.
Yep.
I think he got an Oscar for that.
He did. He won Best Supporting Actor.
And he has been in a lot of stuff since then, and I say he's always good.
Yep.
I think he's kind of in that Christoph Waltz category of like, we need a 59-year-old man to read his lines well. You know you're gonna do fine with one of those two gentlemen.
I don't know if I can put him up at Christoph Waltz tier, but he's good.
They're good actors, right? I think this is his best performance.
Okay.
He plays a cannibal that she runs across before even meeting Timothée Chalamet. And he's kind of like her mentor, kind of stalker, and he's like very disturbing. There's definitely some sexual undertones, like inappropriate sexual undertones that they don't go into because it's all wrapped up in the cannibalism, but there's something weird going on, and he plays this really creepy guy, and he's so good. He's so scary.
I came looking for you. I smelled you.
He's horrifying at points of the movie, but you also feel for him. They build this sympathy around him, and like she kind of decides she doesn't want to stick around with him because he's a little too creepy, and she leaves, and you feel for him, and then he gets mad, and you're horrified of him. And I would say that this is a really solid movie. All of this guy's movies have been good so far that I have seen. I actually haven't seen Call Me By Your Name, but I love the Suspiria remake. But this is worth seeing for Mark Rylance alone.
Okay.
Chalamet's fine, the girl's good, the movie's good overall, but it's just such an interesting premise, and Mark Rylance is worth the price of admission, because my goodness, no pun intended, he eats the scenery.
Yeah.
He literally eats the scenery, because it's pretty crazy. So yeah, it's a fun movie. I don't know, it's not a fun movie. It's a good movie, and good enough that I will check out Challengers just based on the fact that it's the same director.
All I think is that I love you.
And that's our green rodeo roundup, getting all the cabbages in the barn.
Midsummer solstice rounding movie roundup.
Harvest Festival.
Harvest Festival movie roundup.
For the cure.
It's a work in progress, folks. Thanks for tuning in. As always, hopefully you enjoyed us talking about all this random stuff that we didn't have time to talk about otherwise.
Let us know if you had thoughts on any of these. We love hearing from you guys, whether you think we're a bunch of nincompoops or whether you totally agree. So just give us a shout out. Hopefully you've seen some of these things.
Give us a like and a subscribe. Check out our Patreon. We post all kinds of fun stuff, teasers about what we're going to chat about next. And until next time,
Green Corner.